Hello, and welcome to this editor orientation for the author's experience in Editorial Manager, or EM, where we will walk through the process of submitting a manuscript with an eye towards tailoring that experience to suit the needs of your editorial office. My name is Melinda Williams, and I'll be going through this process with you today. You are likely watching this video because you have been asked to answer questions about how to configure your site before it's going live. This session will focus on the steps the author goes through and highlights what is required versus what is optional, what can be removed if you choose, to make things easier for the author, etc. So let's get started. This is Editorial Manager's homepage, where all users, that's authors, reviewers, and editors, come to do their business with the journal. Your site will look similar in layout, except your journal's title and cover will be displayed where this site displays the APA logo and says APA Test Site. The first thing to note about the author experience is that authors in EM must be registered in order to submit their manuscript. The registration process is simple. Users must enter only a first and last name and email address. EM will create a system-generated username and password and send this to the author, who then returns to log in and submit their paper. For our example, we will log in as Zach, who is already registered. By virtue of his logging in to submit, Zach will be our corresponding author. I'll click the login button, and I'm asked to enter a username and password, and I'll log in. And to submit a paper, Zach would click on the Author Login button, which I'll do now. After logging in, I'm taken to the Author main menu, which displays all of my options as an author. I can choose to submit a new manuscript, submit a revision, or access completed items, i.e. manuscripts with a final decision of accept or reject. I'm going to click on Submit New Manuscript and submit my sample manuscript now. The first thing I'm asked for is article type. This is a key and mandatory value that must be supplied by the author, as the article type drives the workflow for the manuscript. By this I mean that behind the scenes in EM, we set up article types, often different ones to suit each journal, and then we set workflow parameters for each article type. Things like what is the minimum number of reviewers we want to review this article type, and how many days do reviewers have to do their review, and so on. There's a lot that is determined on the article type level, which is why it's important that you as the editor think about the types of articles you want to have submitted, what you want to call those types, and whether you want any variation across types in parameters such as those I've described. Article type also drives what the author experiences in the rest of the submission process. Let me show you what I mean. Here I will select Article from the drop-down and click Next. I'm then asked to enter a title. This is also a mandatory field, so I'll type in my title. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, 10 more submission elements have appeared for the author to go through. This is the outer limit of how many submission steps there can be, and from here the site can be pared down to exclude some of these fields as you see fit. However, if I were to go back and change my article type to, let's go back to article type and change from article to, say, short submission, you'll notice that the number of submission steps drops to a total of 4. These 4 are the only mandatory values that every author must enter: article type, title, author data, and the files. Beyond that, the configuration is extremely flexible. Let's go back to the article type to go through the steps in sequence. One note, You'll notice text between red lines here above the article type dropdown. And you'll see the same for each production step that we go through. The text for each step is completely editable by you, so you can tailor your message to your authors throughout the process. Keep an eye on the text as I go through the rest of the steps to see if there are any places where you might want to modify what you see. Okay, next is a title, but I've already entered that. So next, I'm asked to enter the names of anyone who is an author on the manuscript here in the Add, Edit, Remove Authors section. This is a big difference from JBO, where the corresponding author only had to enter his or her own name and email address, not everyone else's. But here, we expect the author to do this task, and you can and should allow your coordinator to send the submission back to the author if they do not enter the complete list of authors. I'll click on the Add Author button to add a second author. You'll notice that some of the fields display in red, others in black. Anything in red is required, and you can choose which fields you want to require or make optional, besides the name. Our default is to ask for an email address for each author, for example, but you could make this optional. So let me enter a name. Now I have two authors listed below. EM assumes the person logged in is the corresponding author, which is usually a good assumption, but it also assumes that the corresponding author is the first author, which can more often be an incorrect assumption. But the order of authors can be changed by simply typing a 1 into the field here for Maggie and clicking on Update Author Order. And now you'll see that Maggie is appropriately listed as our first author. When I'm done adding authors, I click Next. You'll see that as I enter data into a field, a check mark appears next to that submission step, noting that the step has been completed. As I said earlier, not all steps are required, but these check marks let the author know in breadcrumb fashion where they are in the process. The next step is the abstract. This does not replace the abstract that may be required at the beginning of the manuscript. It is in addition to that one. Its usefulness comes into play if you want to be able to send an abstract to potential reviewers without sending them the whole manuscript. EM will pull this version of the abstract into the request letter. Whether you make it mandatory is also up to you. In this test site, it's mandatory, so let me type in a little text. Keywords and classifications are similar, so you may decide to not have both, and if you choose only one, I hope that you will choose classifications, and I'll tell you why. Keywords, free text words or phrases describing the manuscript, are useful but limited. Why? I can explain best by example. Say I type in the word dysphoria as a keyword, but someone else doing a search types in the word depression. In this case, I or my manuscript would not be found because we are employing different terminology to describe a similar concept. Add in problems with misspellings, and you have even more issues with searchability. Classifications try to solve these problems by serving as a controlled vocabulary, a list of terms generated by the editorial office to describe the core subject areas represented by the journal. And so that means that classification lists will differ from journal to journal. When setting this up, there is no grand master list of terms that an office can choose from. Well, actually that's not true. There is a list. If your journal is being migrated from JBO, know that we pull the reviewer expertise data from that system and move it into EM along with reviewer contact information, so you don't start your reviewer pool from scratch in Editorial Manager. JBO's expertise areas equals EM's keywords field. So if you want to use the JBO expertise data to build your list of classifications, this can be done, but know that there are usually thousands of terms in this list, so it's often easier to build a classification scheme from scratch rather than working backwards to narrow down a keyword list coming out of JBO. So back to the screen. Here is my list of predefined terms. The beauty of classifications is that everyone is working from the same list when it comes to describing things. I should also note that classifications are not just used in EM to describe manuscripts. If employed, users, particularly reviewers and editors, should be encouraged to use the classifications to describe their areas of expertise. Once your pool of reviewers has these terms assigned to their profiles, you can use classifications in the reviewer search to let the system find people for you with expertise in subject areas that have also been used to define the manuscript. Looking at the list, you can see that classifications can be a small, simple set of terms, or they could be a more complex, nested structure with parent-child term relationships. I have editorial offices that use 10 terms, and offices with 150 terms. It really depends on how many terms it takes to cover the subject matter of your journal and how granular you want to get with your searching. As I said, classifications are developed by editorial offices, usually editors and associate editors, working together to come up with a list. Classifications take some effort to build, but my experience with journals in EM so far has been that they really like it. Let me add one more term of drug abuse to my list of classifications describing the manuscript. And you can also set a maximum and minimum number of classifications that can be applied to a manuscript if you choose to. So I'll click Submit. So what then, if classifications are so great, is the purpose of keywords? To my mind, if you have classifications in place, the only valid reason to keep keywords would be to give users a place to type in terms that they can't yet find on the classification list. You could use the keywords field to keep your classification list up to date with new concepts, as your classifications list can be edited even after it is initially created to add, remove, or edit concepts from the list. You'll notice that I skipped over keywords. This was to show that if not a required element, the system will allow an author to skip entering data into a field. Moving on, additional information is essentially the author questionnaire online. If you want to use APA's questionnaire but don't know all the questions, contact me and I'll send you the list. My email address will appear at the end of this video. You can make it require that authors reply to questions such as whether they have followed APA style in their paper, confirm that they have or will include a cover letter, or attest that they have complied with ethical principles in any research experiment. The list is wide and varied. If you have your own questionnaire, we can replicate it online here for you. You can have pretty much any type of question you like: yes, no, drop-down lists, text boxes for free text answers, etc. Basically, whatever you can come up with, we can probably make a reality. The question that APA will add automatically for all sites is one about grant funding. We must submit to PubMed any articles that have grant funding from NIH, Wellcome Trust, or the Medical Research Councils UK, so we must ask this question. I'll answer no, grant funding, and then click Next. The comments field here, that's next, is a chance for authors to submit any extra comments they would like to send to the editorial office. Most journals choose to go with either this field or having a cover letter as part of the manuscript file, but not both usually. If you are going to require a cover letter as part of submission, you probably do not need this field, and I'm going to skip it. Next is the option of giving authors the opportunity to list names of people who they do or do not want to review their manuscript. These are the suggest and oppose reviewers options. The fields that display when authors are typing in data on suggested or on opposed reviewers are yours to choose. Let me add a suggested reviewer. Playing around. I love the original Star Trek, so. And I'll click Add Reviewer. And now that person is listed here as a potential reviewer for this manuscript. It's easy as that. You can choose to display or hide these suggest or oppose reviewer steps, but note that you cannot make either a required element. One other point about the suggest and oppose reviewers: you are by no means constrained by this list. An author can submit a suggested list of reviewers, but they are told the editorial office may not use your suggestions. So don't feel as though you are required, because you are absolutely not required to use any data coming from the author in this vein. I'll click Next to move on to the next step. Skip over oppose reviewers. Click Next. Region of origin is a tricky piece of data. It refers to, quote, the region of origin related to your manuscript, end quote. What I understand that to mean is the location at which the research was conducted. This may be different than author affiliation, which is already captured anyway in the Add, Edit, Remove Author step above. My most often used example is that of a researcher whose affiliation is in France, but who does field work in Kenya. In this case, the region of origin would be Kenya. I'm honestly not sure how useful this data is. My fear in this step is that it would be more confusing than helpful for authors. Here's the essential decision. If you are interested in tracking international research, then you would want to keep this step. Otherwise, you might consider removing it. I'll choose a region here of United States just to add it, and click Next. Now we move to the final step, the uploading of manuscript files. And note that I said files, plural. If you are coming from the JBO system, you may know that authors there are required to embed everything into a single file, and that they must submit their cover letter into a text field where any formatting is lost. In Editorial Manager, things work quite differently. In EM, authors must upload separate files for distinct elements of the manuscript and submission package. For example, we ask for a title page with all author information to be uploaded separately from a masked manuscript without author information, and then a separate cover letter as well, and also tables, figures, and supplemental material. This is because EM creates two PDFs of the submitted files, one version for the editorial team, and this PDF will include everything the author submits, and one version of the PDF for reviewers that will, if you have a masked review policy, be set to remove certain elements like the title page or cover letter. Or if you have an unmasked policy, or a combination of both, you can set it up so that some article types get their file elements masked here, and some do not. The file items that you want required are displayed with an asterisk, and display first in the drop-down. You can choose what you want to be required versus not required. In this case, the cover letter is optional, but you can make it required if you choose. You can also set the order for how these items appear in the PDF, with the cover letter first, for example, and then the title page, and then the manuscript. A couple of other things about the file items here. First, you can word these file items however you wish. This is the default language we use, but if you wanted to call the manuscript item just manuscript instead of manuscript without author information, you could do that. And if you have other file items you'd like authors to submit, perhaps you have a print version of the author questionnaire that you'd rather authors fill out and upload, that can be supported. Second is your option to allow authors to submit tables and figures separate from the manuscript. Permitting this is up to you and is one of the questions on the questionnaire. Some editors prefer that the authors embed their tables and figures into the manuscript and not give them the option to upload them separately. However, other editors allow separate upload of files that are tables and figures, which means they will display after the manuscript in the PDF, but will likely be the higher quality version of the images than you would get if they were uploaded as embedded in the manuscript. Note that if you allow separate upload, you may get the tables and figures twice, once in the manuscript file and then again after the file. This would only happen if the author submits a manuscript with these items in the manuscript and then uploads them again separately. This duplication doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And the third thing to tell you about file items is to tell you that you can choose to ask authors who are submitting a revision to upload their replies to the reviewer here as a separate item that will be incorporated into the PDF. Actually, you have two options when it comes to getting this data into EM. You can have the author type in or cut and paste in their reply into a text box that appears here on the left-hand side. It'll be a separate submission element called Reply to Reviewers. Because it's a text box, authors will lose their formatting in whatever text they are submitting. Or you can have authors submit their replies to reviewers as a file item here. I usually call it Author Response to Reviewers. And then it will be included in the PDF, both the PDF version that you receive and the one that reviewers will read. There is a question about this on the questionnaire. So I will quickly upload some files. Start with the title page. Click on Attach this file, and once I click Attach this file, the system processes my request and the file I uploaded appears here below. So now I've got a cover letter, a title page, a manuscript, and two figures. Figure 1 and figure 2. Now, you'll notice also that the cover letter appears third in the drop-down for choosing what you're about to upload. It's third, but it also displays here. It displays here first because we have predefined our order of submission. So if someone uploads a cover letter, although it's not required, it will be first in the PDF. The first thing that you see when you open the PDF will be the cover letter, and then the title page, and then the manuscript. So I've attached a title page, a manuscript, a cover letter, and two figures. Now I'll go to the screen that orders the items to be captured in the PDF. The Attach Files Order screen displays all of the files I've uploaded and allows me to order any tables and figures that I've uploaded. Note that the cover letter, title page, and manuscript cannot be reordered. This is because you preset the order of these elements, as I said, so they always display in the PDF in the order you want to see them. I'm fine with the order here for the figures, so I'll just click Next. Now I'm presented with a summary page showing me a count of which file types I've uploaded. One cover letter, manuscript, two figures, one title page. It gives you a count. At this point, I need to have EM create my PDF so that I as the author can approve it and send it in to the editorial office. So now I'll click on Build PDF for my approval. Now the PDF is being built, and I as the author am being alerted that I'm not done yet, that I have to wait for my PDF to be built and then approve it. It should only take a few moments. And when it's ready, it will move from a current status of building PDF, which it would have been if I had clicked here right away. And now it moves to the status of needs approval. And once you see the needs approval status, action links will appear here on the left-hand side. I must view the PDF to check it's correct, and then I will approve it. I must click on the View Submission link to open the PDF. When I look at the PDF, I'll see that there will be first a cover sheet generated by EM that carries all the metadata that was just entered by the author. And you'll notice that on the PDF's thumbnails, you can see where I am. I'm on the top of this first page. Then I'll see that there will be a header noting each item that I've uploaded, the cover letter, the title page with all author information, the master manuscript without author information. So you can see what item you're looking at depending on what the header is telling you. Let me close the PDF and go back to the screen. If there's a problem with the submission, I would click on the action link Edit Submission to go back and revise my submission and rebuild the PDF. If I wanted to quit and just quit the submission process and not submit, I would click Remove Submission. But I want to approve it. I'm okay with what I see, and I will click Approve Submission now. And then it thanks me for my submission, and my job as author is now complete. I will also receive an email confirming receipt of the submission. I can go back to the main menu, and you'll see that under the New Submissions queue, New Submissions right here, there's now 2 items under the submissions being processed instead of the 1 that was there before. I as the author can no longer edit my submission at this point. It's like putting a letter into a mailbox. It's out of my hands now and is now in the hands of the editorial office. The journal's coordinator can be set to receive an email whenever a submission has been sent to the journal office. The coordinator checks the PDF for the presence of all required technical elements, and then they assign the submission to you as the main editor. So, that is all there is to the author submission process. I hope this has been instructive, and especially that it helps you to fill out your questionnaire for configuring your site. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me at the email address being displayed now.